Time for a Buckeye Breakdown. Adam King and, of course, Austin Ward. You hear him daily, 97.1 The Fan, and daily on the Austin and Berm Show on 10 TV+. All right, Austin, we're going to start with you. We now know who the Buckeyes will play. I will be honest with you. Part of me was hoping to be Texas A&M, not from the standpoint that it was going to be a home game for them, which we all saw that a year ago when Texas. I just think Miami has some very talented athletes, and I thought it might be a better matchup for Ohio State against Texas A&M.
Yeah, I felt, Dom, like it was maybe 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Both of these teams, both Texas A&M and Miami, have talented defensive fronts. They have really good skill players, quarterbacks who can make some plays but are also turnover prone. So either way, I felt like this matchup was going to be one where Ohio State would be favored by a touchdown or more. I think you remove the home field disadvantage with Texas A&M in the crowd. That's a real benefit to the Buckeyes. But to your point, Dom, when you think about the first month and a half of the season, there were a lot of people around the country pointing to the talent for the Hurricanes, that this was a potential national title contender and that maybe you could see Ohio State and Miami in the title game a couple rounds before that. So when they are at their best, they can certainly give Ohio State a test.
And the thing is, and I will say this now, I don't listen to the experts anymore because Texas was the best team in the country. Arch Manning was going to win the national title, and Penn State was ranked ahead of Ohio State too, and neither one of them are to be found. Were you surprised at all? I turned that game on, Texas A&M and Miami, and my goodness, if you like defense, you'll love that game. I mean, it was a defensive war. And I was impressed with Miami's defense.
I am very impressed with Miami's defense. I think that's clearly the strength of their team. I don't know that it was a great display of two amazing defenses as much as it was just not the best football for a while there. It felt like two teams feeling each other out. Obviously, coming into that game a little tight, both of them know that they have to win that game to continue on in their season. Miami's defensive line worries me when it comes to Ohio State's offense. That is, I think, red flag, number one, the biggest thing you have to figure out if you're the Buckeyes. We all saw what happened against Indiana. I think the offensive line, as much as they have been solid all year long, that's probably the biggest reason the Hoosiers got the win in that game. I don't know. That's my worry. I wasn't overly impressed with either team in that game. I'm just glad now that I can wear this blazer without people saying I'm wearing Texas A&M colors.
All right, Austin, he threw it out there. Yeah. Let's go back. And Ryan Day's never going to make excuses, but I have made them. And I am on the record. I'm not a fan of conference championships. That's fine, and we're not going to debate that. But I will debate this because I've been asked a lot by people. They'll go, Ohio State was not tested. We didn't know how good they were. And then they played finally a good team, and the offensive line's terrible and all this. This is the same O-line that gave up 6 sacks all season. They gave up 5 in that game. The reason I am not a fan of the conference championship game is Ohio State, the week before, played in a must-win game for Ryan Day. I think we can agree on that. Yep. There was so much pressure on that game. They had to win that game. And they did so much this year to win that game. And emotionally, they threw into it. And physically, I go back to what former players used to tell me. They used to say, hey, thank goodness we didn't have a game for another month because we were so banged up. That offensive line was banged up in that game. They did not have the same edge. They did not have a nastiness. We could talk about Tegra. He was injured. I don't know. Maybe he shouldn't have played in the game. But I'm making excuses. But they were not the same team in that game. And emotionally or physically, in my opinion, and plus throw in the heart line and all the other stuff that went on.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Don, that they're not excuses; they're explanations. That those are reality. That's facts for what happened in the game. Now, if the Ohio State coaching staff takes them as excuses and they don't try to improve, whether that is game planning, whether that is scheme, whether that is in-game adjustments, whether that was letting Tegra Tshabola play too long, whether that is playing too many tight ends in the red zone, any of that, if they just say, well, that's not our fault, and they don't correct it for the Cotton Bowl, then it becomes an excuse and you're not trying to actually make improvements. But I think we can all objectively, Don, look at that and say, well, the week before, in a game that was really important to Ohio State, the offensive line played its best game of the year.
Sure.
Tegra Tshabola played maybe the best game of his career while picking up an injury that is going to, keep him out of the Cotton Bowl. At least that's my expectation at this point before Ohio State heads down to Texas. So, that's all building there. And it's the difference between excuses and explanations, and accountability is the word that you have to take into that, because Ohio State can't let them happen again when they play Miami in 10 days.
And there's a lot of questions that got to get answered, health-wise and that stuff. And Ryan Day's been very good at keeping that all a big secret this year. We're not sure how the offensive is going to work this year. As we stand here right now, Adam, who's calling plays, and do we know?
I don't know that we know. I do think that it will be Brian Hartline calling plays, but I don't think it's any different.
Ryan's got a headset, though.
Well, yes,
and he had the papers in his hand.
Did have papers, and Keenan Bailey was in his hip pocket.
And Keenan was there the whole time. I think it's no different than if I said, all right, here's the plays, Austin. Have fun out there. And then if I don't like what you're doing with that sheet of paper, I'm going to get involved. I think that's what has allowed Ryan over these past few weeks. That's my biggest, I'm excited to hear what he has to say. What have the last 2 weeks looked like for this team? We've seen them all over the country. We've seen them all doing different things. We've seen Brian Hartline down at USF and Tampa Bay Buccaneer games. And some point you got to get together and figure out how to win a national title. So I do think that Ryan has been the centerpiece here, probably with Keenan Bailey very much involved, figuring out what this is going to look like, whether it had been Texas A&M or Miami. We now know it's that Miami defense. So I do think Brian will still be up in the booth. I still think he'll have a say, but I think his role is going to be very much minimized, especially with everything going on. And if they go to a national title, you've got another month of him trying to be a head coach somewhere else. It's just, I don't think it's feasible, but I get it.
Well, welcome to the world of college football. And Austin, I'm going to say it was an aberration against Indiana, and I hope those two teams meet again.
Yeah.
I would have hoped they would have met in a playoff game where it really mattered. And I'm sorry, folks. It just doesn't matter. It didn't matter. They went from a 1 seed to number 2.
They got the lowest seed, by the way. Yeah. They end up playing the 10 seed. Indiana has to play the 9 seed.
Yeah. I don't even get me going on that, because the whole system's broke. Anyways, with
what'd
that
you think
said,
of James Madison?
Yeah, like I said, Tulane and for you Notre Dame fans out there, I'm sorry, Notre Dame should have been in. I'm sorry. And by the way, Indiana, congratulations, you got the winner of Oklahoma and Alabama.
Yeah,
good luck.
Brutal.
Oregon got Ohio State a year ago. Yeah. That's your reward. I'm going to chalk it up to being an aberration, what we saw with the O-line. As you look. And Ryan Day's X's and O's and all this, yeah. I believe we will see, and I think they learned a lot. They got it down on the goal line, and we can debate what they were doing and all that. The important thing is you got to have points in the red zone.
No question.
At worst, field goals, but you got to have. We'll talk about the field goal. That's a dilemma, and most coaches always worry about the kickers and whatever, but it could come down to a kick.
Well, I think what you talked about in the red zone there, Dom, did the outcome of that game actually matter in terms of seeding, in terms of Ohio State having an opportunity to win a national championship against Indiana? No, but it revealed something that they had been really failing at throughout the duration of the year. That's not me saying it. That's not you saying it, Dom. That's not Adam's opinion. That's Ohio State's own expectation. 67% touchdown percentage in the red zone. They expect to score at 75% of the time. That's a high standard. That's a high bar to reach, but that's the way Ohio State measures itself, and it's trying to win a national championship. So, that's for touchdowns only. You can't have scenarios where you don't even get a field goal. And Jaden Fielding missed. He's not alone. College kickers are not the most reliable position in this sport. You saw that with Texas A&M and Miami. Yeah. Ohio State might actually go into this Cotton Bowl with the best overall special teams unit. I don't know that I've said that in a very long time about any matchup for Ohio State, but that's the scenario that's in front of them. And so that's, I think, why you take what happened in Indianapolis. You might be able to ignore the outcome, that it didn't change anything. But how they got to that point, the breakdowns in the red zone, they can't deny that the issues exist, and they've now had 3 weeks to correct that, Dom. I'm with you. I think that they will.
And just so we're on record, I'm a fan of the quarterback sneak, but I think Lincoln.
Put number 3 in there.
I think we can all agree.
How about Lincoln?
And that's just so.
And he's got a bad ankle, and he's not the most brutal guy.
But I don't understand. Here's what I don't understand, and we all agree at this table that Ryan Day is the best coach in college football right now, far none, and one of the best offensive minds in the sport. How can we sit here and say that with Lincoln Kienholz, and yet they don't? They continue. Like, Julian is amazing at everything. He's shown us that the QB sneak in.
He's got a bad ankle.
Well, he's got a bad knee that likes to hit the ground before he moves forward, which is fine. That's not what he's in there for. And so I'm with you. Put Kienholz in. I think you got to get the extra 3 tight ends off the field. You cannot take 17 and 4 off the field in the biggest moments in any game. I'm a little worried that that's still going to be part of the strategy now that they have to go against that Miami defensive line.
If you're going to go with a heavy package, go with a real heavy package. Let's
An extra offensive lineman.
A la Chicago Bears, if you want to do that.
Well, we saw
Get a
that.
fullback.
We saw that the week before, which I think is what's so frustrating, for all of us talking about it. Against Michigan in the Big House, they put Caden McDonald in at fullback. Throughout the month of November, we saw the Lincoln Kienholz package. We also saw Justin Terry go in as an extra offensive lineman. We saw the Bison package. All of those things were already on the table for Ohio State throughout the month of November. So why they didn't exist in that game against Indiana is part of, I think, the baffling part of breaking down that game. But, Dom, they've had 3 weeks. They had 2 weeks before they knew that they were going to play Miami. I was told that was all about self-scouting. And if you're scouting Ohio State and how you were going to attack them, their coaches know that 13, that 14, that 3 tight end, that 4 tight end personnel grouping has not worked the way they intended. But they've worked on other options already. And I would be stunned if we didn't see that against Miami.
Well, and the thing is, a year ago, it was different. Obviously, they lose to Michigan and they rallied the team. Let's not make this something it's not. Obviously, they were bummed they lost that game. Well, as Ryan said, he was PO'd they lost that game, and he didn't sleep. And it will be a rallying cry for this football team. This team knows the formula, but Ryan is 100% right. That was a year ago. What they did a year ago doesn't matter this year, and it's a whole different animal. The target's even bigger because everybody wants to beat the king, and you got to knock them off. They need to win the surest way, to go back to what Coach Coop used to say. And to me, the surest way is you got the best receivers in the country. Target those guys. You got a running back that has kind of bursts on the scene in Bo Jackson. You got your short yardage guy in Donaldson. And I'll tell you, Peoples is coming on. I think they have all the weapons. Just use them at the right time.
When I look back at last year and you bring up that meeting and everything, the one thing, and Ryan, I believe, said it in the press conference following, previewing the Cotton Bowl. He said, we got to leave no doubt. And I think that's the first time he had said that in probably 3 months. I couldn't remember another time. I loved that mantra last season because it made a lot of sense with this Ohio State team. We've seen in the playoffs throughout the years, whether it's the Noah Ruggles field goal, whether it's the Fiesta Bowl against Clemson, these moments where it all came down to one play that changed everything. Their mantra was leave no doubt last season because they didn't want to be in that predicament. And they weren't in the postseason. I hope they lean back on that from last year. I think everything else, it's a whole different team. You're right, Dom. That team got in that room and they said, what in the world happened in the biggest moment of our season that we prepared for? I think you could argue this team probably got together after and said, boy, that wasn't our best game by far. We got a lot of things we need to circle. I don't think it's anything wrong with anybody. I don't think anybody's doing anything that was detrimental. I just think we've got to figure it out on offense because the defense, well, boy, they're pretty good.
And I want to go back, and then we'll move to the other side, but I want to go back to one last thing with the O-line. I've watched this O-line all season long, and there was a nastiness to these guys, and I love that about them, and there was a toughness. I didn't see that against Indiana, and I gave you the reason why. I fully expect these guys to be back. These guys, they have pride. They were embarrassed, and I fully expect this to be, a war in the trenches. And I think that, here's what I'll say. Protect the quarterback and let's stretch the field. When in doubt, throw it out. I mean, go for it, because I think that look, you're playing catch with the 2 best receivers in the country. I've not seen anyone that's been able to cover either one of them.
Well, and Miami's cornerbacks are considered very susceptible.
Yeah.
I've not watched every single Hurricanes game yet, and I won't, to be honest with you guys. But
you have 14 days.
That is the expectation. That is the way that they are viewed nationally, that Miami will try and get pressure up front. And if they don't get home, Julian Say, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, Max Clare, they're going to have plenty of opportunities down the field. So I agree with you on that front, Dom. if you get that pass protection figured out, there's going to be ample opportunities for the two best wide receivers in the country to work.
All right, before we talk defense, of course, Miami is coached by Mario Cristobal. He played at Miami, and, he was at Oregon.
Beat Ohio State.
And that's what I was going to bring up. There is a history between Mario and Ryan. He came into Ohio State and put it on him pretty good.
He did.
That game was I don't know why we have to bring it up. That was painful to watch.
Well, that game was the pinnacle of what was wrong with Ohio State's defense. I mean, that's the only time, and still in the history of college football, that I've ever seen a team run the same play 4 times for a touchdown. And, I mean, everybody in the world knew what was happening. And kudos to Ryan Day. That's probably where that, and then you look at the Georgia game and the Michigan game, were the pinnacle of, okay, we've got to get something changed. Now, Mario Cristobal, this is a very different defense than the last one you saw.
And I got a lot of respect for Mario. I think, he went back to his alma mater, and, we can debate whether or not the conference are in and all that stuff, but I think he's done a good job recruiting, and I think they do have a lot of talent down there, Austin.
Well, you're seeing a lot of head-to-head recruiting battles between Ohio State and Miami, and I know that sometimes, Miami is winning them. I'm not going to knock how they're doing it. They are certainly spending in talent acquisition, but Mario Cristobal was very good at that at Oregon with identification and relationship building and everything else that goes along with that. He's very good at that. I'm not making excuses or pointing fingers at the way Miami handles its business, but when you're looking at their roster, it's a subplot to this game. Miami's leading rusher, Mark Fletcher, who made those big plays on Saturday against Texas A&M, was a long-time commit to Ohio State. When you look at some of this defensive pressure with Justin Scott at tackle, also a commit of Ohio State for a long time. Ohio State wins some of these too. Jeremiah Smith is from South Florida. He's right. Certainly a one in the win column there. But these programs are going at it on the recruiting trail year after year after year. So there's not going to be any scenario where Ohio State doesn't know that the talent on the other side of the field is capable of throwing punches with them, because they were recruiting a lot of these same players.
And it's never going to end, because as long as Florida has the athletes that it's producing, both those schools, and for a matter of fact, all the big-time schools are going to go into Florida and try to get that talent.
The South Florida Express runs through Columbus in this game, which is a little bit crazy considering.
All right, let's take a look at them on offense and Ohio State's defense. Of course, their quarterback is Carson Beck. He's had a nice season. He's thrown for over 3,000 yards. I want to say he's got 10 picks or whatever, but he's been sacked 10 or 11 times. But, he's done a nice job.
Austin, you and I watched the Louisville game together, which is a big one when you're looking at this Miami team, because I think it is exactly what allows for this Ohio State team to just go out there and feast. Carson Beck is very he really trusts everybody down there. He loves to just let it fly and believe that guy down there is going to win that battle. And against this Ohio State team, you cannot do that. The pressure gets to him, which is weird because he's a veteran quarterback. You would expect a veteran quarterback to be much more comfortable in the pocket, but you can see he gets flustered. Now, when he gets playing, feeling comfortable out there, he looks pretty good. He looks like the Carson Beck we saw back at Georgia when he was helping lead the Bulldogs. But I don't know. My biggest thing, when I saw this matchup, my biggest circle was the running back and Carson Beck. And I'll hold off on the running back right now. But when I saw that, I thought, man, the Ohio State's got a great opportunity.
What a polite way to say that he's turnover prone and reckless, Adam. Kudos to you.
Turnover prone, reckless.
There you go.
Yes, exactly.
And 10 and whatever, and you know what? They've gotten pressure on him, and I don't think he likes getting hit either.
No.
No quarterbacks like getting hit, but I think Ohio State and I think Matt Patricia has the potential to give this kid nightmares at night.
100%. And that he shouldn't even have to do it with blitz packages and different looks. Now, Matt Patricia will do that, but you look at the way that Caden McDonald, Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, Tywan Malone, Edric Houston have played down the stretch. This defensive line can get after it. I really think, Dom, that you look at the last decade with Larry Johnson, this is the best coaching job that he's done, and there's a long list of them. He's got a couple championships on the resume, but everyone anticipated a major step back when you were replacing all 4 starters, and that hasn't happened. And in some ways, they've actually elevated beyond what the Rushmen provided a year ago. So the matchups are going to be right there for them. And then you add in Arvell Reese, then you add in Sonny Styles, and what that can do to maybe take away Mark Fletcher in the backfield, or Malachi Toney, who you saw Miami trying to do a lot of stuff to the perimeter on Saturday against Texas A&M. Some of it worked, some of it didn't work, but I can promise you that against the historically great Ohio State defense, a lot of that stuff is going to fail. And if Carson Beck is forced to win this game with his arm, I personally, as we stand here right now, don't think he could do it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because Caleb Downs is Caleb Downs. We know what he is. Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese, we know what they've become. I believe that the guys on the defensive front have played with a chip all season long. They heard the stuff you just echoed there, that they lost too many guys, and this was not. And in my opinion, this Ohio State defensive front, Adam, is the strength of this defense. And no disrespect to anybody else, but what they have been able to do, and with the way they have played with a chip and with the way they have affected the quarterback, it's been a thing of beauty. And I'll go back to the Indiana game. They gave up 13 points. You're supposed to win a game when you only give up 13 points and you're Ohio State with the type weapons they have offense.
You know, I put out a tweet of Matt Patricia and Caden McDonald sharing a moment at the Big Ten Championship, and I said that Caden McDonald's one of the most underrated players in the country. And then he was named an All-American. And so what I learned in that moment is that I'm out of touch with what they're talking about nationally.
He didn't win the outlet.
He didn't win the outlet. But because all year long I've been thinking, man, people need to talk about this guy more. Finally, he's starting to get the credit he deserves. Caden McDonald is the X factor in this game because I believe that if you force Miami, and you kind of said it right here, this is why I circle Carson Beck and the running back. Mark Fletcher is a great running back, but I do not believe that any team can beat this Ohio State football team with running being their strength. I don't think you can come into this game and say, Fletcher is the reason they beat Texas A&M because he was able to gather, 150 yards on the ground. He made a lot of plays there, busted a couple, was one tackle away from another touchdown. But when you look at that, that doesn't happen against Ohio State. Look at how Michigan tried to come in and run against the Buckeyes. Their sole purpose is to make the quarterback play quarterback. And if you do that with Carson Beck, he's going to make mistakes. They have Tony. Tony's great. But they also, one of my biggest takeaways from watching that Texas A&M game, it felt like they were forcing Tony to get involved. It very much reminded me of almost a Curtis Samuel, where Ohio State would feed Curtis Samuel, and it would work 99% of the time, but the 1% it wasn't. They still leaned on feeding Curtis Samuel, 10 years ago or whatever it's been. So I think that Ohio State is in a great spot here against this Miami offense.
And I think the defense will go into this game with a chip. I think they're more PO'd than anyone because they played so well. They wanted a Big Ten title, and they played well enough to win. I mean, they played lights out. And I expect them to come in. Matt Patricia, to me, was such an upgrade. Nothing against Jim Knowles. But what Ryan Day was able to do in bringing that guy here, and he's, Austin, the one thing I've said to him is that you're always smiling and how happy he is, and his family loves it here. I don't know how any of this is going to shake out, but this guy truly seems to be having a time of his life. And you're talking about a guy that coached for Bill Belichick and has 3 Super Bowls.
Well, I agree with you, Dom. I think he's having a ball in Columbus. I don't think he has any real incentive to leave. Now, that doesn't mean that other places won't continue to come after him. Penn State did just a couple weeks ago. I don't think he has motivation to leave, but I would have said last December that I didn't anticipate the Raiders dropping $6 million foolishly on Chip Kelly. So I can't make any guarantees, but the same thing that you're talking about, Matt Patricia has everything he could want to build an elite defense on hand. He's been more involved as a recruiter than we would have thought he would be 10 months ago. He's taken what Jim Knowles did and elevated that even higher. And it's not just Matt Patricia. It's also James Laurinaitis. I mentioned Larry Johnson. Tim Walton, Matt Guerrieri. These guys have done a phenomenal job. And, the versatility of this defense, the willingness to make changes from week to week. There's another part of this when you talk about being PO'd, Dom. You're going to look at Jermaine Matthews and Davison Igbinosun and even Caleb Downs and Jalen McClain, some of the throws that they gave up against Indiana, they're not happy about that. So they're motivated, and they still only gave up 13 points in that game. So you put those two things together, along with the opportunities that might be available against Carson Beck. Again, I'm making it sound like I'm thinking of blowouts in the works. Maybe it is.
But the one thing that, again, and I know it's hard for us to wrap our mind around because we live in Columbus, Ohio. And when you think of Columbus, Ohio, and you think of Indiana, you're like, well, it's Indiana. Hadn't been, 40 years since they beat Ohio State? That was the Heisman Trophy winner. They gave up 13 points and 1 touchdown to the Heisman Trophy winner. So if you're dialing that back and you're saying it's Carson Beck, listen, Carson Beck, I apologize if you're listening to the show, but I don't
He's a
think
big fan.
He is a big fan. The talent equatedness with what we just saw against Indiana versus what we're going to see against Miami, I just don't think it's in the same realm. And I think you're right. They have a chip on their shoulder, and I think you're right. Matt Patricia, he's just living his life. He should win the Broyles Award. If he doesn't win the Broyles Award, we will revisit that in February. That's all I have to say.
If you're Ohio State, they don't like to give you the big awards.
If he doesn't win the Broyles Award, Don, we will revisit it in February.
Yeah, well, you can revisit all you want. They probably won't.
If they don't give him the Broyles Award.
There is no awards if Jeremiah didn't get it. Give me a break. What are we talking about?
If we don't
Best player in
give
college football.
the best assistant coach in college football the Broyles Award, we will revisit it in February.
Okay, great. What are you, like Luca Brasi?
I
don't know what the threat actually is.
I don't know. I hope we never have to visit
What,
it.
are you going to go comb their hair like you? Anyways, is that the threat?
Why have you not found the Bolitnikov voters yet?
Yeah, there you go.
Because at least with the Bolitnikov voters, they made up something. There is no excuse. I don't care about Indiana's assistant coaches. I don't want to hear it.
Well, I don't know.
We will talk in February.
The Iowa coach sure got a lot of Big Ten Coach of the Year awards. That's all I'll say. They hate Ohio State. All right, last thing. I think Mario Cristobal's. I've already given him the respect. I want to talk about Coach Day. This is a guy that genuinely cares about this program, and he genuinely cares about his players. And he told me, after the Indiana game, he was so PO'd that he couldn't even sleep, and that bothered him.
Yeah.
I have said, and I will say it again, he's the best coach in college football. I think he does an amazing job. He learns from his mistakes, and I think, if anything, he's kicking himself over some things that happened in the Indiana game. As bad as they did on that night, they still should have won that game by 2 touchdowns. No disrespect to Indiana, and I hear you people out there. God bless
You say that
Indiana.
a lot, like these people are listening, and you're like...
They are. They're always yelling at me, and that's great. That's fine. God bless you. I got respect for your coach and everything you've done, but I'm hoping there's going to be a rematch.
I don't think there's going to be.
I truly believe Ryan Day will use all this as motivation. I think everything he's done since last year has been calculated. Every move he's done. He's tried to protect the players. He's tried to keep them healthy. He's tried to do all this. And there were some things that happened in the Indiana game. But I have been so impressed because everything is calculated. He learned so much a year ago, and I think that will carry over. And hopefully it carries over to another national title. And I will say this, Austin, a lot of people raised eyebrows. A lot of big people that I've talked to raised eyebrows. I'm not going to say who some of them were. When he said, hey, we want to be the first team to run it back and win back-to-back. I mean, he threw himself out there.
He did, and he also has taken accountability for what happened against Indiana. When we go back to the excuses and explanations and accountability part, Dom, the day after, all of us were in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center for Selection Sunday. All of us have talked to Coach Day and a lot of other people on the staff since then. He didn't make excuses. He didn't point the finger at one thing over another. He pointed a finger back at himself that he also didn't do enough to be ready for the Big Ten championship game when you had the Brian Hartline situation. You had Penn State coming off after Matt Patricia. You had the Chris Henry Jr. recruiting saga that lasted all the way through Friday. He was stretched a little too thin himself. He did not just say, well, it was everybody else. I didn't have anything to do with that. He took accountability at the very top. That goes back to what both of you guys mentioned about the meeting after the loss to Michigan in 2024 and the way that they rebounded, the way that they regrouped, and the ownership that he took of getting that fixed. That's happening again right now. Again, the Indiana loss didn't actually mean anything other than they didn't get that silver football in the #1 seed. I know that both of those things are important, but the ultimate goal is still to win a national championship that is in front of Ohio State, and Ryan Day is as involved or more so than anybody else in the Woody Hayes to do that.
And I say it, yes, it would have been nice to have Big Ten title, but I will say this. There's only been, and we're witnessing, and I think we all can agree, the professionalism of college football. I didn't think we needed 2 pro leagues, but we're getting another one. And if you look at the other league, there's only been one undefeated team win a Super Bowl. It is not easy to do. And I think that we as fans expect so much, and I will say this, Ohio State fans are spoiled. We don't know how good we got it covering these guys. We don't know how good we got it rooting for these guys. I mean, you look at Ryan Day's record, and it's absolutely amazing. And yet we've got people, whatever. We are spoiled. What makes Ohio State so great also makes it what it's so bad sometimes.
It's interesting you say it because this is the first time I've thought this when you talk about the two professional leagues. It's almost like the Big Ten Championship is winning your division in the NFL. Because when you win your division in the NFL, it's great. Even in the MLB, when you win your division, hey, yeah, this is amazing. It doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. I mean, yeah, you can hang a pennant, but there's nobody in the AFC East that wins their division, loses in the first round, and is wearing the AFC East shirt. So I think you're right, Dom. I think Ohio State knows that, well, that game stunk, and they don't want it to happen again. Better that than in the Cotton Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, or down in Miami against Oregon.
All right, last thing. Do they have it in them, Dan? Do you think they have it? Is the magic back?
I would not pick against this team, Dom. I'm not going to. They have too much talent on both sides of the football. You've got some of the distractions removed for the coaching staff heading into the Cotton Bowl. I don't think Miami is a team that's capable of knocking them off, and I think once that ball starts rolling and you potentially play Georgia in the Fiesta Bowl or not Oregon in Miami, I think Ohio State's going to win the national championship. They're the betting favorite to do so, and until proven otherwise, I'm going to ride with them.
They got the magic?
Can I ask real quick? Who's the not Oregon?
I think Indiana is. I think.
You think we're getting a rematch?
I think the rematch is coming. I want Dom to get his way too.
All right, I 100% think that Ohio State. I love the side of their bracket they're on. The loss in the Big Ten championship helped them a lot. This Miami team, they're good. Like anybody that thinks it's going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be the easiest game we've ever seen. I don't think it's going to be the Texas game from last year, but I don't think it's going to be the Tennessee and Oregon game either. I think Ohio State I think the line was 12 that I saw most recently. I think that's probably pretty accurate. I think the Georgia matchup sets well for them. And although I picked Oregon and Ohio State to be in the championship, Oregon's got to figure out the defense because you can't give up 30-plus points to James Madison and make a national title. So.
All I know is, and I go back to what I said, Ryan Day is very calculating, and he learned so much a year ago, and I think he's back on it. And to you folks out there that think Ohio State's O-line is terrible and that they're going to get dominated by Miami, I'm telling you, did you watch any of the games this season? Ohio State's O-line was outstanding. I'm going to say it again. The loss to Indiana, no offense, was, Indiana, God bless what Cignetti's done over there, and they got a lot of money, and get ready. I don't think Indiana's going anywhere as long as they want. They've got a big alumni base, and they got a lot of money they can bring, and they're going to use the transfer portal, and they're going to do it. But let me just say this. If you watch the game of football and you watch that O-line all season long, that was not the same O-line against Indiana, and I fully think that it will start with the O-line, and if the O-line can do what they've done in every other game, including against Michigan, this Ohio State offense will be fine, and Matt Patricia's still got the defense.
Broyles Award
winner. They gave up 13 points against this highfalutin Indiana, so there you have it.
Falutin?
Highfalutin.
What does that mean?
It's a word. I'll teach it to you later.
Falutin.
Yeah, there you go.
A lot of notes you had to take.
Anything else you would like to say, Mr. Austin?
I'm just really excited to get down to Texas, Dom. I think it's going to be a fun week. We got a lot of coverage coming on the Austin and Berm show, and of course, I'm going to pop in on some of the 10 TV morning shows.
Yeah, you're doing mornings. You excited to wake up early?
We'll talk about that later. That's going to be a new one for me, but hopefully we'll be able to chat with you guys down there as well. It's going to be awesome. Wall-to-wall coverage. That's a good name for a show.
Wall-to-wall sports is the show.
Well, I know, but I just mean we were going to have it covered from every angle, podcasts, television, 97.1 The Fan, everything. We got it.
And as the sign says behind Mr. Adam, we're chasing the championship with the Buckeyes. And let me tell you what, we're going to be there every step of the way on 10 TV, 10 TV Plus, 97.1 The Fan. If you are a Buckeye fan, there's no place else to get the best coverage there is. Keep it on us. And we love doing it because we love it. We would do it for free if we could.
Don't tell them.
That's accurate, but please don't tell them.
We'll see you.